So start me a physiological process of the body that doesn't involve some kind of higher intelligence. You know, they can make, our best scientists can make cells, and they can divide these cells into two and so forth, but they can't do anything with that. They end up at the end of the day with the same thing. Okay? So if you subscribe to the fact that there's some kind of a higher intelligence, then that is your personal religious conviction, because that is your, maybe your superior, the divinity that is part of your life. So absolutely no question is the fact that one's religious belief has nothing to do with the church, but rather the dictates of one's own conscience. So it really doesn't matter if you kind of came to that from a scientific reason or whatever. It's just like, this is my personal belief, okay? Now, it further says, I am so sorry about my voice. I've been yelling, I guess, too much. Actually, I was outside yesterday up on the roof putting up Christmas lights and stuff, and there's all this stuff blowing around, so I'm trying to get rid of it now. So what does a valid exemption look like? Well, here's the one thing, is that when you have the exemption...
One second, I need you.
Okay. Excuse me.
Sorry, last 4 digits of your social.
5470. Okay. Nothing with the kids. It's okay. It was a legal thing. So anyway, when you start to get into the exemptions, then you want to be able to exercise your right. Now, one of the things is that we've all heard of the separation of church and state, okay? It doesn't mean that religion can't come into the state, but it does mean that the state can't dictate the religion to us. That's the way the law was. It always has been. But you look at what's happening now, it's just like we need to get all the religion out of the state, out of the government, okay? So it's interesting times that we live in. So anyway, going back to what does the exemption look like? Oh, there it is. I do. So here it is, a copy of it, and anybody wants one. And what it says at the very top, it references the official code of Georgia annotated section 20-2 771E. So it tells you exactly what it is, okay? It says this code section shall not apply to a child whose parent or legal guardian objects to immunization on the grounds that the immunization conflicts with the religious beliefs of the parent or guardian, okay? Now it does that, which I didn't show you earlier. However, the immunization may be required in cases when such disease is in epidemic stages. For a child to be exempt from immunization on religious grounds, the parent or legal guardian must first furnish the responsible official of the school or faculty an affidavit in which the parent or guardian swears or affirms that the immunization required conflicted with the religious beliefs of the parent or guardian. So we put the remedy right there. I mean, nobody can, it's not like well, it's against my religious belief because I don't believe blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's not what your belief is, it's what the law is. So we put the law right there. And then we say an affidavit means a written statement made under oath before an authorized magistrate or officer. Notary publics are authorized to witness oaths. So when it says that the parent or legal guardian swears or affirms, that's kind of what they're talking about. So you want to have it notarized because that is your oath, okay? That's your word, okay? And you've heard, well, what if you go in and lie about something? Well, you've perjured yourself. So this is a way of saying, hey, no, this is my statement here. And then fill in the blank, the name of the child, parent, guardian. And it says a requirement of immunization relative to the official code of Georgia annotated, boom, 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 are in conflict with my religious beliefs, and you sign it in front of a notary. It's a simple, easy thing. Simple, easy thing. It's done. Does that sound simple and easy? Is that exciting?
What about that clause, though, about, does that open the door for forced immunization?
Well, that does kind of open the door with that. But here's the thing, is if they, she's talking about if it's an epidemic that, that you might be able to be vaccinated, okay? And so what that means is that most of the time, if there's an epidemic and your child has not been vaccinated and is in school, what the school system does is say you can't let your kid come into school for 2 weeks. Okay, so it's not like they're going to come out and vaccinate you. Aha, we're going to vaccinate you.
Could they, I mean, does it lay the framework for potential down the road?
Well, they could. I mean, they could.
I know right now it's like months, you have to stay home, I think, for 21 days or something like that. There's like, you know, I know.
Yeah, but there's no law that says that. Okay, that what you're talking about, that's what the procedure is. And also because kids are required to go to school, if they're going to say, listen, don't bring your kid into school, what do you think is going to happen? They have to send somebody home to continue your kid in the educational process at home. Of course, if you're already homeschooling, then that doesn't help anybody. But if you are in the public school system, that's what would happen, okay? Now, the other thing, unfortunately, just since you kind of broached this subject, is that governments are big bodies, organizations, and big bodies of people and groups and things like that, and you are you. So if you're going to demand your rights and assert your rights, and there's tanks and weapons and everything around your house, and say, we want you to come out and submit to this vaccination or we're going to annihilate you, then you can choose to either be annihilated or come out. But there's obviously, you're not going to be able to win that situation because they're just bigger and more powerful. And of course, that's the dictators and the brutal things that have happened throughout the world. I mean, that's what they do. They gain power and control, and they do things like this because they're not maybe godly people, we'll say. So, but that's the easy way to do it. Now, I've had people all the time that have used this, don't have any problem. They get right into school. I've also had people that go in, because when you have to get your kid registered for school, there's the registrar, okay? Or it could just be somebody that's helping out the registrar to collect the data. And so I come into school, and Carol's going to be working in the school. She's helping the registrar, and she's collecting data. Okay, I need the your ear, nose, and throat doctor, you know, the checkoff. So I give her that. She's like, I need your vaccination form. I give her this. She's going to say, what's this? This is not your certificate of immunization. I say, so what would you say to her if she says, this is not your certificate of immunization?
Ask your manager about it and look further into it.
Don't get too ahead of me here. Because most people say, I'm not going to vaccinate because vaccinating is bad. It's against my religious belief. What happened right there? She thinks I'm a whack job, for starters. She also thinks, because she thinks that vaccinations are good. Okay? So I'm a double whack job, and now it's just like it's her job to make sure that I protect my child. And right now I'm not protecting my child, am I? I'm being abusive to my child because my child should be vaccinated. Okay? You don't think that, do you?
No.
Okay.
That I can get this. It's fine.
Oh, okay. So Olivia made you come and get this, huh?
Yes.
Even though she had a big project she had to do.
Yes.
Well, super. So, yeah, so it's, it can become very confrontational, okay? So we don't want to have any confrontation. So it's just like Jamie said, if you have any questions about this, just bring it up with your supervisor. But this is my child's immunization record. And you go, if you have any questions, just bring it up with your supervisor. So Carol's going to run in the back and say, hey, there's this whack job guy out here that wants the kid to get into school, and he, you know, gave me this. And then tell him we can't accept that. So Carol's going to come back to me and say, sir, we can't accept this. You know, this doesn't comply. Say, well, the law is right there. If you have any questions about it, just take it up with your supervisor. Well, I just did, and this is what, okay, then I would suggest that she take it up with her supervisor. Okay? So what I'm doing is just like, I'm obviously avoiding getting into a discussion with her because it's only going to go downhill whatever we talk about, and I am passing the buck so she can go, you know, take it up with your supervisor. Well, what is it that I don't understand here? Okay? But I didn't create an enemy through confrontation. I stayed out of that whole football arena kind of a mentality, okay? So she's going to take it up with her supervisor. We have had that happen back and forth with different places, institutions, and so forth, all the way up to the superintendent of schools for the entire state. And all of a sudden it filters back down, and they call you up and say, your child can come in, this is fine. Because it gets to somebody who actually knows the law. Okay? And, oh, nobody knows the law. Nobody knows the law. In so many things.
States where we don't
Whoops.
have the privilege of religious exemptions. What do you typically recommend for that?
So why would you want to move a state like that?
But if it trickles, like California, West Virginia, Mississippi, like if those continue to trickle.
So does everybody want to find out a little bit about that? Okay. So before we do, I do want to just segue into a little bit of another section before we go into this. Because now the state's even gotten more subversive in trying to get you to comply with things you shouldn't do. Because now you go in and they've got a Form 2208 where they say, this is what it looks like,
It's a new form, right?
the new form, the Department of Public Health.
Yeah,
Okay.
is that where you're putting your kid at risk? Is that
Yes,
the form?
that's-
Oh yeah, so this is the form the health department has and everything. Oh, for religious reasons, here. Just sign that, okay? This is what it says, that so-and-so personally appeared before me, the undersigned notary public, and swore or affirmed as follows. I am the parent or legal guardian of so-and-so. I understand that the Georgia Department of Public Health requires children to obtain the following vaccinations before being admitted to a child care facility or school. And it's got a list of these things. Well, I think it doesn't. The law does not say the law does not say that the Georgia Department of Public Health requires children to obtain it in order to get into school. So that's a lie. Okay, that's a lie. 3, I understand that the Georgia Department of Public Health has determined that these vaccinations are necessary to prevent the spread of dangerous diseases among the children, blah, 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 blah. The required vaccinations that a child who does not receive these vaccinations is at risk of contracting those diseases, and that a child who does not receive those vaccinations is at risk of spreading those diseases to me, to other children in the child care facility or school, and to other persons.
I have a question about that, because every time I hear that, I think, how could that be? The one that is not vaccinated, according to their way of thinking, would be the child at risk.
Correct.
So
Right.
how possibly could a child coming in without the vaccination be a risk to the other children?
So here's a prime example.
Vaccine, they
Here's a
say.
here's a prime example. Here's a prime example of a rational, intelligent thinking individual trying to communicate with somebody in the insane asylum. Okay? It doesn't make any sense. There's no rational thought in that process. No rational thought in that process. So let me ask you a question. Why would you sign that? Swear and affirm, number one, that you're saying that the Department of Public Health does have the authority to do that. And number two, that you're admitting that all that's true. If you're admitting that that's true, what does that make you as the parent? A negligent parent. There's no way in the world I would rip this stuff up. I would throw it away. I would get violent in their face. Say, listen,
I know
you've got.
people that sign it with, what is it? Under duress.
It doesn't matter. That's a legal thing. It doesn't matter because the remedy is within the law. Just go with the remedy. I mean,
Forms that doctors make you sign, some of them too, saying the same thing.
Yeah, I've always been told doctor if you.
I put it in my backpack and walked out.
Yeah, there you go. So here, number 4, I sincerely affirm that vaccination is contrary to my religious beliefs and that my objections to vaccination are not based solely on grounds of personal philosophy or inconvenience. I mean,
It just
they're-
makes you sound awful.
they do. They make you sound like you are the most negligent parent. What does the Department of Public Health do when they have a negligent parent?
Take your kids.
Defects, yeah. What does that do? Well, that takes your kid away, okay?
Mandatory vaccination.
Yeah, and then once your kid's away, guess what? Now they're going to be responsible. They're going to vaccinate, shoot them up, and then they're going to give them back to you, maybe. And now, if something bad happens, now you've got that child for the rest of your life. I understand that notwithstanding my religious objections, my child may be excluded from child care facilities or schools during an epidemic or threatened epidemic of any disease preventable by vaccine required by the Department of Public Health, and that my child may be required to receive a vaccination in the event of such diseases is in epidemic stages. So when you sign your name. So when you start doing an affidavit, now you are saying that this is true, okay? How many of you have heard of prima facie evidence? Anybody know what that is? Anybody heard of it? Okay, well, you do know that a grand jury is convened, basically, and then you've heard that a grand jury was convened and so was indicted. You've heard these things before? Okay. So what that means is that when somebody that, we'll say, the prosecutor wants to get, okay, they collect data and they convene a grand jury and they present to the grand jury, what do you think? Just the things they want the grand jury to see. So the only conclusion that a grand jury can come from looking at all the evidence that the prosecution provides is, the guy's guilty. Let's indict him. That's what that means. So prima facie evidence is kind of like the first, well, it is the first evidence. And the first evidence in anything is just like not us having a conversation, he said, she said, back and forth kind of things. It's something in writing. It's something in an affidavit form where I swear and affirm, like on the Bible or whatever, that this is true and factual. So that's the first evidence. So your exemption form, this is the first evidence. This is your remedy within the law, okay? It's a legal document because you swore and affirmed with the notary. So you take that first evidence, and now somebody comes in and says, oh, well, this isn't true, we need this or that, and they try to get you jumping through hoops. This is the first evidence. Why would you want something like this to be the first evidence? You know, an attorney might argue that. They're not going to go very far, but they might argue with you on that. They're not going to argue with you on this. They're going to take your kid because you're a negligent parent, okay? So yeah, it can become very difficult and challenging.
What do you suggest doing? I mean, does that law they accept now? I don't think they accept anything other than that.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Oh, you've been listening to the whisperings of the neighbors, have you?
The vaccination groups are
Yeah.
people, you know.
Oh, you know,
Tried it.
yeah,
The
there's,
local ones, not the big crazy ones, but like the
Yeah,
local
the
ones
local.
with people who write about their experiences with getting into school.
yeah, well, that's because I don't know what they're doing. Okay, they're going off little bits of information, and they're not following through. You know, if somebody comes and says, well, you can't do that, the reason that they say that is because it came out. So notice the proposed rulemaking. This is from the Department of Public Health. Brenda Fitzgerald is a medical doctor. She's the commissioner. She wrote this big thing and says, listen, you've got to have these people do this, and this is the only thing that's legal. They have no legal authority to do that. They do have the legal authority to, let me see. This is under the health codes. This is Title 31, Chapter 2. This isn't it. This one. Title 31, Chapter 12, Control of Hazardous Conditions, Preventable Diseases, and Metabolic Disorders. It's the power to require immunization and other preventable measures. It just gives the county health department the opportunity to administrate vaccinations, if you will, immunizations. but not for school or not for anything like that, what they're telling you. It just gives them the authority to do this, and it also gives them the authority to get this information. So here we go. Somebody takes the affidavit in, and the school says, you have to put this on this other form. So they were all excited. Oh, good. It's going to be easy. Fine. I'll sign this. They didn't sign it. They asked me about it. They says, what do you think about this? Is this okay? I mean, they at least saw that it was different than the exemption that I gave them. So what we did was we formulated a letter that went back to the school with the affidavit. And so the affidavit here is Exhibit A in this letter that we went. So this went to, it was the Cherokee County Health Department, and it says, Dear Miss Graham, she was in charge there. We have submitted application for our son, boom, 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 to the school, and included in the materials an exemption to the immunization requirements as part of his records. The exemption entitled Affidavit of Religious Conflict with Immunization Requirements was submitted in good faith and in accordance with state law and is attached as Exhibit A. We were then informed via somebody of the school system that it was necessary to fill out the affidavit of religious exemption. This thing, Public Health Form 2208, as was directed by a nondescript form from the Cherokee Department of Health, listing this Pamela so-and-so as the contact person. We hereby respectfully decline this request. So in other words, we're just putting some facts in, some statements, and we're being very gracious, and we respectfully decline this request. And then we continue on, as stated specifically in the Official Code of Georgia, annotated section 22771E, boom, we just repeat it there. The law is quite clear and explicit, and while we considered your request, we feel your request to sign the Form 2208 affidavit may be considered prejudicial against us. Okay? Our first concern is number 2 within the Form 2208 affidavit that gives the impression that the Georgia Department of Public Health has the authority under law to dictate requirements for school admission. Okay? Which was not true. Okay, we've already discussed that. While it is true that under 22771A, this one, Certificate of Immunization is a form provided by the Department of Public Health, and subsection C, specifying certain diseases are required. We again refer to our affidavit, Exhibit A, that references subsection E, which states the entire code section doesn't apply. Also under number 3, so now we're going back to this one that the Department of Health has, may have determined certain vaccines are necessary does not necessarily make a truth. So just because they decided that they're necessary doesn't mean that it's true that they are necessary. And for us to sign an affidavit that we acknowledge this as a truth would be contrary to our religious beliefs. Okay, so we're just telling them why we can't sign it. Number 4 appears to open the door for an individual or governmental agency to determine if our religious conviction is sincere or not. Would this not be a violation of church and state? So I'll remind you number 4. It says, I sincerely affirm that vaccination is contrary to my religious beliefs and that my objections to vaccination are not based solely on grounds of personal philosophy or inconvenience. So basically, what you're saying with that, then somebody could come in and say, okay, prove to me it's not out of inconvenience or your personal philosophy about vaccinations. Prove to me it's religious. Well, there's no human authority that can prove that you have a deeply held religious conviction. That's a personal thing between you, and your God based on your own conscience. So we put that in there. In an effort to be thorough, we researched the health codes under OCGA 3112-3, which is this one, because this is a new thing that they came out with like 5 years ago. They put it in the health code. Power to require immunization and other preventative measures, and 31-12-3.1, vaccination registry reporting requirements, maintenance, and use. Code section 3112-3A allows the department to require certain vaccinations. However, like our affidavit, subsection B states In the absence of an epidemic or immediate threat thereof, this code section shall not apply. So it says the same thing in this. So they don't have the authority to do what they're doing, and it just says this. Code section 3112-3.1 allows for the Department of Public Health to create and maintain a registry and reporting requirements that does not grant any further authority to contradict OCGA 22771. So the law is saying whatever you do, you cannot contradict this. Okay? But that's exactly what they're trying to do, and they're trying to get you to sign something that any rational thinking parent would not sign, okay, under threat of duress or not. I mean, that makes no sense to just sign something because I don't think I have any other option, and so it's under threat or duress. Now you're creating a controversy if you ever end up in court. So, OCGA, is it okay if I'm just reading all this? 31-12-3.1d states vaccination records for any person included within the vaccination registry shall be maintained as part of the registry until the person's death. So our affidavit, Exhibit A, should be considered our son's vaccination record. This should clear up any confusion in regards to us declining to use Form 2208, as well as asserting that our original affidavit is one we feel comfortable with and is in full compliance with our remedy within the law. Receiving nothing in writing addressed to us with a signature of the individual, or the identifying individual, blah, 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 this matter is closed. So,
That was pretty good. I like that.
so what do you think happened?
That
The
child
child
was
went
in
to
school.
The child went to school, okay? And I do know there was some other questions, so I want to get to that. But I've helped people in New York State. You know, here's another thing where they've flipped things around, okay?
You have to prove now in New York, don't you? You're religious.
Well, see, that's unconstitutional. And see, you just put the verbiage in. So we had, they were going to a Catholic school. And here's the thing, because in college now, they require a meningitis shot, okay, in order to get in college. But guess what? College kids aren't compliant because they're not accessible, okay? But kids just going into college, like seniors in high school, they have I've got to graduate, I've got to get this, boom, boom, boom. So now the state of New York says, okay, well, what we're going to do is that we're going to require 12th graders to get the meningitis vaccine. And if you don't comply, you're going to get kicked out of school. Well, I can't get kicked out of school because I need to get my school. I mean, so talk about threat and duress. I mean, these people are just unconscionable, you know, unconscionable. And not to get into the whole big thing, but we went back and forth, I think like 3 or 4 different things. And they just got themselves in such a pickle that they couldn't respond to anything, and they just dropped it. They threatened the kid, threatened the kid, threatened the kid, and then they heard nothing. Heard nothing, and the kid just stayed because the kid wasn't going to leave. And she graduated. She just graduated this past June. So now she's in college. And she said, Dr. Luke, can you write me something? Because I'm going to a different state. I'm going to Rhode Island for college. So I says, fine. So I gave her an affidavit, and she's fine. No problem. Arkansas. This was, oh my God, 20 years ago or something. Somebody kind of ruffling feathers, they charge, it's unconstitutional because the state of Arkansas said you have to, I forget the exact verbiage, but you need to be an accredited religion, okay? That you have to go, so it wasn't religious belief legally, it said that. And they've challenged it as being unconstitutional, and the judge agreed, I agreed, okay? It was totally unconstitutional. They can't do that, separation church and state, if you will. So Arkansas, now they don't have an exemption, but there's all these people that had an exemption wrongfully, but they had the exercise the remedy within the law, but guess what? Now there's no remedy in the law. And Arkansas was in a panic. And this one family reached out to me. They had like 5 kids and says, what do we do, you know? And so I wrote them a whole big thing. I mean, that was like an 8-page affidavit that they filled out and stuff and took it in. And this was a school district where they were just unmercifully hammering people. And that was the end of it. Just stopped it. And it's not because I'm so good. It's just because I've had different experience. I've had different experiences that got me to the point where I could do these things, okay? And so anyway, and then they changed the law, and now it's a functional law, and they actually have religious or personal exemptions, even in Arkansas. Oh, isn't that baby cute? Don't vaccinate that baby. So how do you communicate your position? So we talked about this a little bit, okay, as far as, and I'm not going to belabor that. This is actually in my website, so you can reread all this stuff. This is just building the animosity with people. Okay. I call it the Garden of Good and Evil. Okay, you just get in this. So here's an important concept. If Carol thinks that vaccination is good and I think it's not good, okay, who's right? We're both right because she believes what she believes and I believe what I believe. And the fact that she believes what she believes, are you right or wrong?
No, either.
No, you're right, because if you weren't right, you wouldn't believe it. Okay? So you're right and I'm right. Okay, so we're battling. But because she has the overwhelming majority of people on her side because she believes in vaccinations, then she thinks I'm a bad person. It's not right or wrong anymore, and bad equates to I'm evil. Look at what I'm doing to my kid. I'm neglecting my kid. I'm doing all these bad things to me. So now, you know, look at all the religious wars in the world. I mean, because they think that, well, my God is better than your God. My religion's the only religion. I mean, all these different religious battles that go on. So, and we stamp out evil. So if she's right, therefore good, and I'm evil, and her job is to go back and play football and annihilate me, right? So we don't want to, we need to understand that that's a concept, which is why we don't ever want to get into a controversy with people. Because then we're trying to intellectually have a conversation with somebody that should be in the insane asylum. Okay, so all that's there. So here's the question. Well, before we get to the follow-up question, you need to get the information and any help that you need. Make any confrontations as easy as possible while obtaining your objectives. What is your objective if you have a kid in school? To get them into school. It's not to educate anybody about the fact that vaccines are bad and you shouldn't do it and non-vaccinating is better, blah, 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 blah. The only objective you have is to get your kid into school safely and not have the school system think that you're bad and there's something wrong with your kid. Okay? So don't fan the flames. So the tree of fruit in plenty, the cornucopia of good thoughts and good feelings. So now, Kyle asked the question, and I'm answering it now that he's left. What happens in states where there is no remedy within the law? Okay, those states are now California, put that out. West Virginia has always been like that, and where's the third state that's always been like that? Mississippi, okay? We have a Mississippian in our midst. So how do you get away with that, okay? Would it not be true that an unconstitutional law, whether there's a remedy within it or not, is still an unconstitutional law? Okay? Makes sense, okay? If there's a remedy within the law, it makes it a little bit easier, okay? But if there's no remedy within the law, now what do we do? Let's back up a little bit and look at the U.S. government, okay? When Congress, which is the House and the Senate, okay, when they're in session, they tend to think that their job is to create laws, okay? Do you agree that that's what they think they need to do? And so in the creation of those laws, you need to understand, go back to your 8th grade history, U.S. history, that they are actually overseeing two different bodies, or groups, if you will. The one group is the Union of states, okay? And that has general applicability. In other words, if they create a law that is applicable to the states, then that means it's applicable to you and I, okay? They still can't create any unconstitutional laws, okay? Now, and this group is called, guess what? The United States of America. Now, the other group that they're creating laws and they're overseeing is the corporate structure, if you will, of the federal government. Okay, how they run the government, all these kind of things, the running of the government, the agencies of the government, and so forth. And those laws are not applicable to you and I. They are applicable to the government employees and agencies thereof. Okay? And that group is also referred to as, guess what? The United States of America. Okay? So now, when Congress creates these laws, they can create laws for one or the other of these groups. So the question I have is, when Congress creates a law, how do you know whether it's applicable to us, it has general applicability, or it's only applicable to the corporate structure of the United States? How do you know? Let me repeat that because we were all distracted with the little ones. So if Congress creates a law, how do you know whether that law has general applicability with you and I because it's for the Union of States or it's appropriate only for the corporate structure of the United States? How do you know?
You don't know.
Okay, thank you. At least somebody answered. So is there anybody, everybody say, I don't know?
I don't know.
Okay, good. So would you like to know?
Yeah.
So I'm going to go through real quickly some of this stuff for you to understand this. But